degrees of sexual abuse. Barry Bennell inflicted the most severe form. His victims were repeatedly buggered over 2 to 3 years. But sexual abuse also includes indecent assault, and that's what happened to players at another major league club. Legally, the offence may be less serious, but the effect on the victims is nonetheless devastating. Dean Radford is now in his mid-20s and playing for a semi-professional team in Bristol. As a teenager, his ambitions were quite simple.
My game was to captain England, play football, earn money and be famous.
He was a first-team player with Southampton, having trained from the age of 13 with their youth squad. Among his teenage teammates, one Alan Shearer.
They told me that Southampton was the best route to fame and fortune. The bigger clubs were too big. They would just buy someone later on. Southampton would look after me, groom me, and bring me through.
And who told you all of that?
Bob Higgins.
Bob Higgins was Southampton's youth development officer, the man who'd decide whether Dean would later be offered the all-important traineeship. Bob Higgins coached at Southampton, then Peterborough United.
For me, you're one of the greatest footballers on the planet.
Like England players Matthew Le Tissier of Southampton and Chelsea's Dennis Wise, Rod Wallace of Leeds, and football's most expensive asset, Alan Shearer.
Higgins was a brilliant coach, fantastic coach.
Today, he runs a private soccer academy.
I would have done anything for Bob Higgins. And now I feel sad about it because I think a little bit of me feels a bit sorry for him. But there's a lot of anger involved, I'm a lot... that I'm not doing this interview to get at him. But what he did was wrong.
Was it abuse?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah.
Was it sexual abuse?
In my case, yeah. What he did, there's no explanation for.
Players regularly stayed at his home. Some prefer to remain anonymous, embarrassed at what happened and worried about the effect on their sporting careers. All have been enormously reluctant to speak.
I just basically walked into the front room and this other lad was led on the settee with Bob, just like a father and son kind of thing, which I thought, was a bit curious and didn't really know what was going on.
When you say they were on the settee together, in what way?
Led out, full stretch, basically cuddling,
He'd ask you to come over and lay on top of him, or lay next to him. And he'd drape his arm over you, undo like your buttons on your shirt, put his hand down your top.
Hand down your shirt?
Yeah, and just like rub your chest or whatever.
Many players felt awkward. One boy tried to avoid further contact by going to bed.
He'd just come in and he just was in, he was standing over my bed and I just sort of was half asleep and just looked round and he was standing there.
Standing there clothed?
No, he didn't have any clothes on, no.
When Bob Higgins drove players to and from matches, they experienced more curious behaviour.
If he was in the front, sometimes he'd get you to lay across him while he was driving.
When you say lay across him, what do you mean?
Like with your head in his lap and whoever was there, be stroking your hair or whatever. Or you put your hand on your knees while he was driving.
He always wanted people to touch him. I can remember people having their hands pulled across and touching his leg and touching his stomach and things like that. It was almost he didn't feel comfortable unless he had somebody touching him.
He insisted on doing most physiotherapy himself, highly unusual for a coach. So were some treatments he introduced, which others in football consider unnecessary.
We would have soap water massages where we would basically lay down fully naked, just on the floor, basically in the changing rooms, in the shower room. And soapy water would be sort of poured over your body naked, and he would massage all over your body.
He liked to touch young lads at that age group. he was just in a position where he had a lot of young lads around him, and by having a soap water massage, you know, he's probably in his element, basically.
Most of the time, if you was lying next to him, you could actually feel like he had hard on at the time.
He had an erection.
Erection, yeah. But again, at the time, it was like, well, is this normal or not? Do you know what I mean? You didn't really like pay too much attention to it. And until like now, you look back and you're thinking, well, that was wrong.
Still, no one complained. At 14 and 15, they needed his approval to be signed as Southampton trainees. It took a more serious and more obviously sexual incident before Bob Higgins' behaviour was questioned.
I had a problem with my spine, so he said, well, come to the first aid room and I'll have a look at it for you. I then went into the room, shut the door, told me to lay on my belly, pull my shorts down, which I did. He then didn't say a word. He basically inserted his finger or fingers, I wasn't quite sure, up my backside.
And how long did that last for?
30 seconds.
Did he say why he was doing this?
He said he was massaging the bruising out of my spine.
And did you accept that explanation at
At
the
the time, yeah.
But the club found out and called in the police.
Bob Higgins was eventually charged with indecently assaulting 7 Southampton footballers. His trial here at Southampton Crown Court was split into 2 against the wishes of the police. The first jury only heard allegations that he indecently assaulted 1 victim, Dean Radford. There was no mention of the other 6. That jury found Bob Higgins not guilty. The prosecution then dropped the other charges. The second trial was cancelled. Dispatches has spoken to a great many Southampton footballers and uncovered evidence which was never heard in court.
And he looked at me and he said, like, touch me. And I'm like, well, I'm already touching you. He was going, no, touch me. Like, and he looked towards his like penis as if to say, like, touch him there. So, and I was like, no, I already am.
Could you have misunderstood in any way?
No, I thought to myself, while it was happening, I thought, well, maybe I'm misunderstanding. What is he, you know what I mean, what does he mean by that? And that's what made me say, I'm already touching you, because I was, 100% sure I was already touching him, so what more could he want me to do? And he looked down and like towards his penis, and that's when I thought, nah, he obviously wants me to touch that. And that was my line he'd gone past.
We used to be lying so close together, I could feel when he had a hard-on. Felt terrible lying next to a bloke with a hard-on. 3 or 4 times, Bob got hold of my hand and guided it over his flies. Tried to make me undo his flies and touch him. I just used to pray for something to happen, like for the phone to ring, and Bob would sit up and make everything seem normal.
I was in the lounge with all the other lads on the settee, and he slipped his foot down my trousers. And for a 14-year-old lad, you really don't quite know what to do there. You know, I just sort of froze to the chair. And he didn't remove his foot. He just stayed there for a while, and he started moving it around. And this carried on for about a minute or so.
So he was actually massaging you with his foot?
Yeah. I was just didn't know what to do, and you don't know how to react to that. Probably the worst experience of my life, really was.
I used to hate being in the car with him. He'd get me to lie down with my head resting in his lap for the journey. One time he tried to go too far. He half undid his zip and got my hand and kept pushing me to undo his zip further. He wanted me to fully undo his zip and touch him. He tried to undo my trousers as well. I just jumped up and moved over to my window, stared out of it for the rest of the journey.
In a statement to dispatches, Bob Higgins denied everything.
I have never requested any player to masturbate me. I have never touched the genital area of any players and attempted to masturbate them. I have never walked naked anywhere in my home. Soap water massages were done for the following reasons. Their muscles were aching and a psychological aid for players to feel refreshed. In a Crown Court of Law, I was found totally innocent and acquitted of all charges. My wife of 22 years finds all these allegations amazing.
2 years ago, Bob Higgins joined Peterborough United as a youth coach, without the manager knowing about the court case. The job was offered on the personal recommendation of their youth development officer, Kit Carson, who'd known Higgins for years. He told players the charges were sour grapes from trainees, not good enough for professional careers. Peterborough's trainees soon witnessed Bob Higgins' personal style.
We used to just dress down to our shorts, go into the shower area, lay on the bed, and he used to put his hands in the hot water, which would mix in with soap, and he used to massage our calves, and that's as far as I mean, I think he might have probably done his the backs and chest probably as well.
He used to cuddle the players, but there was a lot of touching on the knee. And during away games, he used to play love songs in the car while you were travelling with him, or he would touch your knee.
After the court case, Bob Higgins became a born-again Christian. His faith now found a way into his football. He said by laying his hands on players he could cure their injuries, and several players were baptised.
I can remember one of my teammates telling me what it was. He would put you in a bath. I'm not sure if you were naked or if you had shorts on, I'm not sure. And it would be similar to faith healing, really, but in a bath.
And where did this happen?
Well, I'm not sure. But it mostly happened in Bob's house. People at the club used to go home to Bob's house at the weekends. And a lot of the baptising used to happen in his bath, at his house on the weekend.
Was anything ever said to you about telling outsiders about the baptism, the faith healing, the prayers? Did Bob ever say?
Just basically it was kept private, it was kept within the squad, and in his eyes it was kept within the family. That's what he'd like to see it was.
Bob Higgins left the club last year. The 4 footballers who stayed most often at his house and were baptised are still at Peterborough. The club stopped them speaking to dispatches and issued a statement.
Bob Higgins left by mutual consent. The club were not prepared to tolerate his strong religious influences upon its young players.
Bob Higgins told dispatches,
Faith healing. I fully admit to this. I am proud that I've been given with my wife the gift of healing through God. Players were baptised at their request. Players wore football shorts at all times.
Bob Higgins still uses different locations around Southampton to run his own private soccer academy for 150 boys. Last month, we found a squad training in a public car park beside the river. Bob Higgins set them off jogging along the shoreline. As the boys are under 16, we've obscured their faces. Bob Higgins obscured himself by driving away at high speed.
He was just in his element with young lads. I mean, he's obviously got a weakness for young lads, and I just think he was very clever in the way he went about it all. He knew how far to take each given lad, and I think he just worked on each different lad he wanted to. He took his favourites, and that was that.
Charlton Athletic believe they're the only club to face up to the possibility of sexual abuse in the game. And when Les Reed hears what's happened elsewhere, he's certain that's necessary.
Here we have an opportunity to do something that we really enjoy, to give kids